Hello there, Eric here, your learning futurist. And in this video, I'd like to talk about a topic of ownership, especially ownership of digital contents. The idea of actually owning something has been changing ever so slightly, like a frog in boiling water, since the day the internet was invented. For example, you buy a CD back in the day, you had a physical something you put in your CD player. You could give that disc to someone. You can actually make copies of it or destroy it if you wanted to, lose it. But now we don't have those physical items anymore. Things like movies, music, books, other print materials are all digital. And so when you own something, it means a little bit something different. And service providers, the big tech companies, are slowly but surely pushing their ownership on the contents that's being put on their platforms. And a couple of recent news that came today, we're going to talk specifically about Apple in this context, show us kind of the trends and kind of exemplify what's happening in this idea of ownership in the digital era. The first article I'd like to introduce is something that came up in a lawsuit in Northern California. A man was denied access to his Apple account. His Apple ID was terminated due to some sort of infringement on Apple's terms of service. Now, the terms of service of Apple are very broad and very contain so many different things, so we don't know what exactly this person did to get themselves denied access to their Apple account. But on this particular person's account, this person bought over $24,000 of apps, music, movies, and other subscription services, which he has now lost access to. So Apple says you can buy content, you buy things to watch, or you buy them in perpetuity as long as you have access to your Apple ID. Now, they actually say you buy things. We're going to get to that in the second article on this topic in just a minute, but do you really own it if you need an Apple device, if you need an Apple account and an internet connectivity to really consume the things that you have purchased? The whole idea of owning something is kind of thrown into flux when you put these barriers into place. Companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, Facebook, they're all working on their own sorts of DRM, domain rights management, which is just a fancy way of saying controlling media, controlling contents after they're purchased and out into the real world. Part of this motivation to do this is to protect against pirating and copying, but other motivations are just, strictly profit motive. If they can control something more heavily, for example, make you watch it on an Apple device, you're more, you're kind of trapped in that Apple ecosystem if you want to continue using all the things that you purchased anyway. So I'd imagine this person here that's suing Apple was really happy with Apple and would probably never want to move away from Apple to an Android device or something else, because that meant you would lose access to all of this purchases, music, whatever, on Apple devices. So maybe you can start to think about it and write down in the comments what you actually think ownership looks like or should look like in the digital era, especially when it's concerned with Apple, because this is the couple of contents that we're talking about today. Now, the other kind of thing that came out around this is a class action lawsuit that got put against Apple several months ago. And this is over a couple of people, lawyers, getting together and with a lot of kind of crowdsourcing, if you will, with this class action lawsuit. And they are going after Apple for the terminology used in their sales of media, particularly movies and music, right? You go to the Apple Store, you go to iTunes, and you want to purchase a movie. You want to rent a movie, there's a buy button and a rent button. But when you click buy, the whole idea of buy, to own something, is, in this case, these lawyers have said that that's not really fair of Apple to say that you're actually buying something because of these long terms of service that are attached to it, because of the internet connectivity you have to access it, because of the Apple devices you have to use to view it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So do you really, when you buy that music or that product on Apple, do you really own it? Are you really buying it as far as what the consumer, the average consumer, feels like what it is when they buy something, for example, at the grocery store or on Amazon when it comes to them in a physical way? So Apple, of course, fought back against this. It goes against their business models. So they tried to get this thrown out of court. So the recent news is that the judge that was involved in keeping this decided to keep this conversation going in the courts. So Apple's attempt to get this idea of letting them sell as use the terminology buy things was immediately rejected. So we're going to see more conversations and another legal battle around this, just the terminology to be able to say you can actually, quote unquote, buy something or have that buy button with the media. And of course, I'm sure Apple is a little bit nervous about that, because as soon as you switch the terminology, the consumer will get flagged, or there will be some sort of idea in the mind of a lot of consumers now that you're not really buying something, you're just renting it anyway. So why not just rent it from Apple instead of just buying it, because it's got all those things that connected to your account, like I said before. Right. So, if you watch me or my channel or read my research, I'm really into immersive technology. So let's take this 5 to 10 years into the future, because we know Apple is really excited about immersive technology. Tim Cook has said several times that he believes augmented reality is something of the future, and they have thousands of engineers working on augmented reality. They have a headset coming out next year. So buying something in the digital sense in immersive technology is even more ambiguous, is even more important, perhaps, because these ideas that we're just talking about, do you actually own a digital thing, is going to be more connected to your real life and your real situation and your day-to-day life as soon as these technologies get more in the mainstream. When I've been calling it the phone on the face era that we're slowly moving into, where everything you see, hear, and touch is filtered through a digital lens. Now, those digital lenses now can be bought, rented, right? Services can be procured that now allow you to augment your day-to-day life. For example, I often give the example that you can get a facial recognition software, put it on the phone on the face, and it would recognize faces for you and display names on top of the face. So just like we don't remember phone numbers now, we won't really remember names as much, perhaps, if we're overusing this technology. Now, let's say you have this app that you bought that displays the names on people's faces. Also gives you you bought an app that tells you how to get to certain places. And now you have done something that violates the terms of service of Apple, or they decide to change the terms of service, which in the terms of service they're allowed to do. Now you've lost access to that service, which you pretty much rely on to communicate and conduct your business life, your social life, et cetera, et cetera. So now this idea of buying software, having software available to you is much more deeply connected to your physical, real world application and how you live your life. That's just one example how this thing will be exacerbated and how um, conversations and legal approaches and new legislation around do you actually own something will be super important when we move into these immersive technologies and the phone on the face era moving towards the future. All right, what are your thoughts about that? If you have any comments or questions around immersive technology and the idea of actually owning something in the digital era, please leave it in the comments below and we'll discuss it and we'll see you in the next conversation. All right, guys. Bye-bye now.